Okay, Coleen.
Everybody comes together very quickly for each other in the clinic. When one of our animals are sick, someone will always step up and say, I'll be there.
It's okay, girl.
Dr. Hillier examines Grover. She then orders an X-ray. Just as they suspected, it reveals that Grover is carrying a very large egg.
So her whole abdomen was filled with this egg. And it was very alarming because, I mean, you look at that and you go, how is she ever going to pass that egg?
Dr. Hillier admits she's not an avian expert, but that's exactly what Grover needs.
This is the first time I've seen a Quaker. Oh, that's what a Quaker parrot looks like. So being really upfront and honest and saying, okay, we're going to work through this together, but it's going to take a little bit of figuring out.
Sometimes what can happen is if the egg is not passed, it will fracture and they'll get an infection from that, and that could kill them. Or the shards of eggshell may actually, as they're being passed, may traumatize the tissue. One way or another, the egg has to come out or the bird will die.
Dr. Hillier makes a call to a well-known avian specialist in California.
I actually have a Quaker parrot here who seems to be
Dr. Hillier's first question for the specialist: what about crushing the egg?
Because I had heard of vets doing it in the past. You know, you crush the egg and then they pass the egg.
This is it? We just wait?
Well, yes. Everything's gonna be fine.
Okay.
Promise.
Coleen decides to go along with the plan. She takes Grover back to the comfort of their home, convinced this will increase her chances of passing the egg.
Grover was very much in tune with Colleen's emotions, so Coleen being upset meant that Grover was upset. So she was trying to stay away, but at the same time making sure that she was okay.
She would put her little feet up on the bars of the cage and just push, you know. And it was heartbreaking to watch that. I got to the point where I was thinking something else has got to be done here. We've got to do something for her.
Coleen called me at home and said, like, she's doing this, she's in the bottom of the cage, she's been straining for the last hour.
Coleen had called me and said, you know, we're going to have to do it. There's nothing else that I can do. I can't wait any longer.
She was really at the point that, you know, I would rather put her down than have her endure this any longer. It was really kind of a do or die moment. We need to change the plan. We need to fix this problem now, or accept that Grover is no longer going to be with us.
Okay, Clover, we have to get going.
But it was very, very, very hard to put her in that little travel carrier again, probably for the last time. Just that drive, you know, in there, at the 10-15 minute drive was probably the hardest, you know, I've ever had to do.
So once again, Coleen rushes her to the clinic.
No, nothing's happened yet.
They consult again with the avian specialist, then make a decision.
So he agreed that, you know, enough time had gone by and he thought that now we should go in and try and do something. Now it was between him and Dr. Hillier to try and come up with a plan of what they were going to do.
Ready for surgery now, okay?
The plan: put Grover under anesthetic, then try to induce delivery of the obstructed egg.
I had done very few bird anesthetics, so my biggest fear was that simply my anesthetic protocol would be lethal to her.
That evening was going to be the most difficult evening that I've ever faced. I've never dealt with putting an exotic animal under anesthetic before.
Like most birds, Grover is small with a very fast metabolism. There is no safe injectable anesthetic that will immobilize her long enough to perform the procedure. Instead, the vet will use anesthetic gas. This will put her to sleep, but only for a short time.
She's under now, Dr. Hillier.
Okay, I think we should take it from here now, okay? Everything's gonna be fine. We should go.
So I ran out and got a coffee or something and
So we introduced a little bit of anesthetic, had her on a little heating pad to keep her warm, and then essentially tried to deliver the egg. So just very gently pushing it in one direction and trying to make an opening on the other side to get it to move. So whether it was simply inflammation or that she started to form scar tissue around it, but even working our way around it and putting pressure, it simply wasn't moving.
It's not working.
So then the decision was made that if we remove the contents of the egg, maybe that would relieve some of the pressure. So essentially putting a needle in, scrambling the yolk, sucking the yolk out, so you're just left with the shell, so it relieves the weight of the egg. And that's what we did.
The procedure complete, Coleen returns to see Grover.
Dr. Hillier looked at me and said, I've got some good news and some bad news. She said, Grover lived through the anesthetic, but she said we couldn't get the egg out. So my heart just, just kind of sank because, okay, we did that, but the egg is still in there.
Grover regains consciousness, gripped by excruciating pain.
I believe that they had just turned her off anesthetic as I came back. And when she woke up, she was just totally more distressed, and she was screaming in pain, and I mean, it was awful.
And it was probably one of the worst moments I've had in practice. As soon as she could hold her little head up, she immediately was making regurgitation noises. Her entire belly was contracting, and you could tell that she was in obvious distress, like her whole body was reacting. And that moment, for me, my heart rate could not get any higher, and I thought, like, I've failed everybody at this point. Like, this is the worst thing that I could have done for her. It was a tough moment for me to kind of face the music and be like, okay, this is not working. Like, we've got to do something else.
She called the avian specialist again, told him what had happened, and his words were, did you crush the egg? And she's like, no. And he said, oh, you've got to crush that egg.
It's like, this was the one thing we're not supposed to do, is crush this egg. But it really, we had exhausted all other options. Because I was not willing to surgically open her up, that would be way beyond my skill set. Crushing the egg was really the only other option. We had to relieve the pressure in her belly.
She had to go back under anesthetic for the second time.
Picture kind of this egg, you can feel it. It fills up almost her whole belly. So just grasping the sides and using gentle pressure. When we're crushing the egg, we're literally grabbing it on either side. And you can feel, there's a muscle layer, and then it's the body itself. And they develop a little bit of fluid as a result of inflammation, having that egg sit there for a long time. But you really have to use a lot of force. So it comes to a point where it's kind of, your whole body cringes and you just go for it. We're kind of like, oh, moment. And then it was done, but it's not anything I ever want to do again.
Crushing the egg doesn't make Dr. Hillier feel very good, but it has an immediate positive effect on Grover.
And when we woke her back up, she was groggy, but she was actually comfortable. She wasn't retching, she wasn't contracting. She was sitting up and interacting quite quickly.
Even though the egg crushing procedure was a success and Grover is more comfortable now, she's still not out of the woods. She now needs to pass all of the shell pieces, and these can sometimes be quite sharp and cause tearing and damage on the way out, potentially leading to infection or scar tissue later on.
There was a little bit of hope now that now the egg was smaller and maybe she could pass it. We had little bits and pieces now to come out instead of a big egg.
Coleen can't wait to take Grover home again, but the empty eggshell remains inside her body, and that's a major concern.
She's terribly, terribly uncomfortable and painful. And that's when they agreed that it was time for surgical intervention, and I had to get her somewhere if she was going to live.
As a last resort to save Grover's life, Dr. Spear recommends surgical removal of the eggshell. He makes arrangements for surgery at the University of Florida.
But this is an emergency.
Colleen's task, get Grover there.
But my fear was that again, I had to do something, but was she going to live through a flight and a drive and already compromised and a bird that got car sick and God knows what would happen on a plane?
So you don't.
Coleen spends several hours on the phone making travel plans. She then heads to the bird room to check on Grover, who's been unusually quiet.
I had probably left her alone for the longest time in a while, several hours probably. And when I went in, cage floor, and there was this strange looking object on the floor, and I'm like, that's got to be the shell. I can't believe it. To see that eggshell finally out after all that, and on her own, to do it on her own, I really just believe she did it for me.
We all did a lab happy dance by the light of the X-ray viewer, so it was definitely, it was a moment of celebration for all of us.
I think it was a miracle. I really do. I think it was. I think that was probably one of the miracles I've seen in my life.